Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today, what I want to have is a talk about our railroad watches. I got an email from one of our subscribers named Peter, and he said, he'd like to hear something about railroad watches. Well, first of all, let me tell you, most railroad watches are sort of vintage pocket watches. And one, I'm not into vintage and I don't know that much about pocket watches. It's not that I don't like them, I just have interest elsewhere. But this looked really interesting to me. And so let's take a look at this. This is going to be a relatively short one. But I think it's if you like railroads, love going into New York and going into Grand Central Station, jump on Metro North and stuff. So that's sort of a railroad for me. Okay, railroad watches were train scheduling became extremely important during the age of rail, and then when airplanes came along and some other forms of transportation, they weren't as much so. But I think railroad watches really were very responsible for a lot of the requirements for precision. Now, there were a number of standards that they had, and here's one of the old ones. And they had these watches, and there were several more. These particular ones happen to be American. American Waltham Watch Company. It's located up in Waltham, Mass, north of here. They turned the factory into a really interesting apartment house. If I lived there, I'd move into that apartment house. And there were a couple things that I noticed that were sort of interesting. On the American Waltham Watch Company, they had the four watches that they had were all what they call a double roller. I wasn't familiar with a double roller. And then I looked at Ball Watch Company, and Webb Ball was the guy who helped set up the standards for railroad quality watches. And he has two in the Ball Watch Company. There were two. They both had double rollers. And I go, what is a double roller? And then I looked at the Elgin, and they just had a single roller. Well, what a double roller is sort of interesting. Imagine this is your pallet fork, and on this end is where you have your fork and your pallets. Okay, and this is the other one that kicks around the hairspring and the back and flips it one way and then flips it another way. And a double roller, there's on top there's the main roller, and then on the bottom there's a smaller one, and there has to be some kind of stop element there so it doesn't swing too far one way or the other. But I thought that was sort of an interesting thing. Now, railroad watches today, there's certain styles that are associated with it, and so let's take a look at a few of them. The first one is by a company called RGM. The person who makes it, his name is Roland Murphy. He's one of the few contemporary American watchmakers. And he has two different styles. The one I liked was called a Type 2 Montgomery Marginal Minute style. And it was based on a dial that was patented in 1920. You could see it up there. And so here you have something that was very precise in terms of it's sort of a syringe type minute hand that's right on the minute. And so you can take a look at it and see it right away. Now, the movement that he has in here is a vintage Hamilton 921. It's a manual wind, 1.5 hertz, 18,000 VPH, which I just love. And it has hour, minute, and seconds. And the name of the watch is a Model 222RR. RR, I think, would be for railroad watch. Now, the next one is Ball. Now, remember Ball, when we looked at the first page, Ball was the guy who set a lot of the standards. And this is called the Railroad Standard, 130 years, referring to the 130 years since this was established. Now, the ball movement is called an RR1105C. It's based on an ETA 2895-2 with a 28 4 hertz, I'll put it that way, movement in it. And it's got date, hours, minutes, small seconds. It's chronometered and certified COSC. So very accurate watch. I just love this watch, and I'll tell you why. The dial. If you look at the 1, right next to it, it'll say 13, and then 2 says 14. 3 doesn't say anything. Then you got a 4, 16, so forth. Now, what those are for, if you've ever tried to work out the 24-hour timing, you look at a 1 and then you do a little math and say, oh, it must be this, so it's a 12 plus 1, so that's 13. Well, here it's in the afternoon, it'd be, if it's at 1 o'clock, it'd be 1,300 hours to 1,400, and then you have to guess what's between 14 and 16 to figure out what 3 is, and so forth. Love this dial on this watch. This is very, very cool. On the 7 on Ball watches, they have a little thing that says Ball at the time. This one's $2,900. There's something about it I really like. I think I'll get on Metro North and go into Grand Central with a Ball Railroad Standard. Now, the other one that I found, this is an Omega Seamaster Railmaster. I guess it's part of their heritage collection, and it's got a caliber 8800. It's one with a silicon balance spring, and it's got an interesting frequency, 25,200 VPH, which is probably, I don't know, I guess 3 and 3.5 or something like that. It's got date, hours, minutes, seconds, chronometer, coaxial escapement, that I like. And I don't know why, but this was considered a railroad. It's called the Railmaster. Now, they have a lot of other models, and I think this is one of their more recent ones. And not sure why they call it that, but it's one of the, if you're looking for a railroad watch and happen to be an Omega fan, this might be a really interesting one. They also advertise it as having 15,000 Gauss. Well, with a silicon hairspring, Gauss goes way up very quickly, $4,900. Now, there are probably a lot more of railroad watches that you know about and I don't. But if you know of any that are modern ones, I'd really like to hear from you on it. Let me know what you think. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. And as always, this is an invitation to subscribe if you'd like.